What's up, gentlemen? It is Wednesday, December 17th, all day long. How's everyone going?
Doing pretty well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we out here. It's market is in absolute free fall today. It's a little fake and bake to the upside, and yeah, just cooked. Bitcoin down at 86, and
Just enough time to open up a short. Got it.
I I feel like obviously if you sold a few weeks ago, a month or two ago, now's the time to just stack up again
yep.
because just get paid. You pay 8/10 of what you sold at.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there was a really good chart, and I wouldn't call him necessarily influencer, but guy who gave some analysis around Bitcoin not clearing 93,000. And he was like, if we don't clear 93 on the weekly, then we're going back down. And how far below, plumbing the depths of the chart, where do we go? I mean, it could easily, not in one fell swoop, but it could easily end up in the low 70s. Yeah, to your point, you could have exited the trade around 93, and today you'd be picking up with a $10,000 swing.
If you're slow, then you could move. You could have sold at 110 because there was a lot of signals up there.
Oh yeah, well, a month, yeah, for sure. I mean, on October 6th, which is a month and a half ago, or I guess 2.5 months ago, I should say, was all-time high, 120 something, whatever.
Yeah, it's always hard to get the all-time highs and all-time
Yeah,
lows.
yeah.
But like I think it's very realistic to imagine selling at like 110, maybe 115, because it spent a lot of time there.
It
It
did.
was like went up and down, went up and went down, and there was a lot of opportunities and a lot of signaling that it's kind of just run out of steam. And so, there's a lot of opportunities up there. And now we're in like the 80s. And I feel like you could maybe grab a 70, but I don't, I think it's going to be hard. I think the 70s is going to be like the 120s
Yeah, it's
to
going to wick
try
down
and
there.
snatch
Yeah.
a 70 out of this. But if you're just willing to, take the averages, sell at 110, wait, buy at 80, 85, wait, sell at 120, that's just good trading in my opinion.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, look, you have to have also the discipline to exit, but also have your eyes open to re-enter. And I think, a lot of people get a lot of anxiety exiting a trade. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're a long-term holder and believe in Bitcoin, yeah, you could swing trade it, but that just means you have to have, some markers set and kind of be clear on what your strategy is. Cause I'll never forget when I sold a bunch of ETH at 700 and never saw 700 ever again. So that was a tough trade. I also sold some ETH at 365 and in the mid 400s and never saw those numbers again. So there were two trades that gave me, anxiety. I also remember buying a bunch of Bitcoin at 10,000 and actually I was trying to buy it at the very high nines, and then and when it broke 10,000, it ripped right to like 10,300. And I remember being super upset because my trade ended up clearing at like 10.2, but I had placed it at like 9.9. I was like, this is so messed up. Like I didn't get the number. Well, now that number doesn't matter because if you were anywhere in those ranges, we're happy about those trades. But yeah, it's just, when we'll probably never see 10,000 again, and that, there was just a moment in time that you could have done that 5 years ago. And I remember people selling at 11, 12, 13, 14, 50. I remember Tone Vase. I was watching his YouTubes and he was unloading his Bitcoin at 15,000. I saw him unload like almost every single day. He was unloading massive positions in the 15,000 range. I bet he would love to take all of that back, but he was trying to be a smart trader. You know, hey, we blew past 10,000 and, you know, now we're sitting up here at 15 and we're probably going to retrace. And, you know, he unloaded a bag and was trying to prepare for certain kind of market conditions. And, you know, hopefully he bought it back when we went back to, you know, we did make it down to 15,000, right, Josh, or 15 or 16,000 in 2022. I remember.
I don't even remember what I had for lunch, let alone what happened in 2022.
No, but I remember like right when we were starting Packet Pal, I remember it, that there was it was like a bottom down there, in those either.
Well,
Yeah, and that
there was the COVID wick, and anybody that caught the COVID wick is a hero.
Yeah, well, that was 30. I believe that was in the mid to high threes. Yeah, I actually have one of my friends that is the most uneducated trader, is a completely dumb money guy, and I'm talking about Roy, Josh, and he literally was like, Bitcoin seems like a good investment. I'll put $20,000 in at $4,000. And he bought 5 Bitcoins just sat on them. He just didn't even think of it. He's just like, hey, I'm just going to get 5 Bitcoins and, you know, just hold on to them. Now he looks like a genius. You know?
Well, yes, but then I don't know how it played out for him, but I remember that he
fucked up his ETH trade.
No, he cashed out some of his Bitcoin because it was up like so much. And then he went into some like random fucking altcoins.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He also went into the sandbox and he sold a ton of ETH and he bought digital land. And I remember him telling me that he was like, yeah, this land's going to be worth crazy amounts. And he was just buying up these squares on a map.
Everyone was
love to get those ETH back.
Going to be a thing. we were looking at it. We were excited.
I know we looked at it. Luckily, we didn't buy any.
Yeah, luckily we
did. You remember me? I was like, that is not.
Yeah, I remember. That sat with me when you were like that, saying how dumb of an idea that was. And yeah, you were very right on that.
Yeah, because I mean, you guys stands up a website and makes a grid and then starts selling squares on the grid. I mean, we've seen this before. Remember, you guys probably remember in the 90s, like late night commercials where they would try to sell you square inches of land on the moon. Do you remember that?
I vaguely remember.
Yeah, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah. What are you gonna do with it?
The metaverse. That's right. It was the metaverse, and that was like, but that looked really like it had legs because Zuckerberg was throwing money in it, and then it just amounted to nothing.
Yeah, look, it's a really interesting. It was an interesting moment.
What Meta accomplished, though, you did shit on Meta, and the whole time you were shitting on Meta, you should have been buying Meta stock.
Yeah, you fucked up on that one. You were wrong on the Meta trade.
That was can't
hit them all.
I only have to stay alive and be right once or twice a decade.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, number one, don't get wiped out. And number two, do a good trade once or twice a decade. Yeah. And that's enough. You don't have to catch every top and every bottom.
Yeah, but you were convinced that Facebook was going to zero, and
I still don't touch the stock. I have no interest in Facebook. No interest. I mean, I wish I liked like Nvidia and all the chip makers because they're making a lot of money for a lot of people, but I can't get it past my like risk perspective, and I just say no. I'm gonna sit this one out. I'm going to let them make their money on their own. And if what's his name, the Big Short turns out to be right, then, I will have been vindicated in that. But, I know that's where everybody's making money, but I'm just going to sit it out because.
Well, look, you can also buy the dip on whenever that bubble pops, and it is interesting if you look back on the Bitcoin trade, like we remember if we go back to like, what was it? It was like 2017, 2018 or whatever. I remember there was a moment where Bitcoin ripped up to like 13,000. And it was right around that time when the Doug loan, went like parabolic. Remember, Josh?
Yeah.
And we were like, oh my God, like he'll never be able to pay this back, because we had a colleague who took a loan from another colleague, borrowed 400 Bitcoins when Bitcoin was like 400, or when Bitcoin was like $4,000. And instead of taking a loan against the Bitcoin, he sold all the Bitcoins.
Well,
And
the
was
loan
like,
terms were that you didn't have to pay back the cash; you had to pay back the Bitcoin.
right, had to pay back in Bitcoin.
Basically,
He's like,
shorting Bitcoin in the beginning of a bull run.
So yeah. So he basically borrowed 400 Bitcoins and had to pay back. I thought it was, it was like 480 Bitcoins, or it was like a 20%. He was like, pay me 20% return. So here's 400, pay me back 480. And the guy sold them.
What did the lender have as collateral for that deal?
There was no collateral.
Yeah.
I mean, it was insane. It was the dumbest deal you've ever heard of. And so the guy sold them, didn't even take a loan. Like, he should have taken a SALT loan against it or something like that, because those loans were available.
Yeah.
And he sold it, and then Biddy ripped from like 4,000 ish to 13,000. It was like, it kind of just kept going. We were just like, oh my God, this guy is like, that loan was worth like 13 or 14 million dollars or something. It was
now
like
it's worth 40 million.
or more. Wait, yeah, no, it's worth way more than that.
No,
400 Bitcoins times
90,000. It's 4 million.
Is it? Okay.
40 million.
So yeah, so that was like a first kind of like front row seat to just like, oh my gosh, like, you do not want to be on the wrong side of a Bitcoin trade when it's ripping, like you just certainly don't want to borrow against it. And it could go the other way. I mean, we saw a lot of people get wiped out if you took those loans out at 70, 80,000, then it drops all the way down to 20, like you're getting liquidated on those positions. So yeah, it's just very, it's freaky.
Yeah.
Borrowing and crypto really don't mix, because the swings can be so violent that it just becomes a black hole. Safdin Amour, I forgot his name exactly, who wrote the Bitcoin Standard, wrote quite a bit. He's if I remember right, he's a Muslim. He wrote quite a bit about how Bitcoin would make debt impossible. So Muslims don't like debt, and so he says that it's halal, because it would make borrowing impossible if we were on a Bitcoin standard, because you wouldn't be able to safely lend or borrow anything. And if you tried to run a fractional reserve bank, you would be at risk of people just coming and taking custody, and then running the bank, and you're just out of money.
Oh, you mean Celsius?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's true. It's definitely a big issue. Well, what I just saw a really interesting analysis, because there's been all of these XRP maxis talking about how XRP is going to be adopted by all these banks and this and that. And what this guy that I follow said, and I really agree with it, is now that the Genius Act passed, which allows banks to basically create their own stable coins. So they're not going to be using XRP. Like, why would they use XRP when they could create their own stable coin, put their clients in the stable coin, and then take the cash behind the stable coin and go put that into treasuries and take the yield on the treasuries and the yield on their clients' deposits? Yeah. So it's like, why would you go use some volatile crypto token that's controlled by some centralized entities that are clearly just dumping it into the market for their own purposes and have their own treasury management strategies, when you could be a bank and just issue a dollar-backed stable coin and then use the cash to go, take treasury yields? So
that's the smart thing.
I was like, whoa, that's pretty damn smart.
I think the reason why XRP has so much cultural momentum, let's call it, is because the people behind it are giving it away to institutions in exchange for the institution saying we've adopted XRP. And the problem with that is that they're paying the money, they're using their depositors' funds basically
Mm.
in order to in order to buy influencers. Let's say, it's a bank, it's an oil trader, but it's basically an influencer,
Right.
to then talk about XRP. But the problem is those banks, they're getting the free XRP, or whoever they are, they're getting the free XRP, but they don't want to be on the other side of that. They don't want to be they don't want to be putting money into XRP,
Right,
because
yeah.
it's being given away to people like them. So
Right.
they want to be the smart ones. So it's kind of like an influencer. This is,
Yeah.
I can't say
That's
I
fair.
know this. I'm not, disclaimer, don't blame me if I'm wrong. I am very conservative about a lot of things. But I think that something like XRP has the pattern of something that, like an influencer token, where it's being handed out to people in exchange for those people saying, yes, we love this, we adopt this, this is our thing. And that those people never want to actually buy it. They want to sell it.
Right.
All those banks, everybody who's saying good things about XRP, they're saying good things about XRP because they're getting it for free, and they're going to sell it, and they're going to sell it to you if you're the buyer of XRP.
Yeah. And that's the exact mentality of these influencers. And we've come across them, so many of them with Packet, where they're just like, how many times has someone said, oh, I'll do influence on this, blah, 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 give me 1% of the token supply. And it's just like, what the heck are you talking about? We've even had people ask for more. It's like, well, first off, we couldn't even give you that if we wanted to. That's, it's a mined token. And then that mined token's now been airdropped. Like, it's not, not feasible, but that's because they all think in the token mentality framework. And those guys who get that, the instant, and for the people we have remunerated with coins, have literally just instantaneously dumped them. That's just what they do.
I think we were significantly protected by the fact that we didn't have a lot of coins, and it was a mined coin, and it wasn't like we didn't have the ability to just write somebody a check for 1% of the coin supply. And I think that if we had that ability, there's a risk we might have been convinced by somebody that this is the way you should do it when you're starting a project.
Mhm.
And we would have ended up with people saying that was a rug pull, because the influencers got some significant amount and then they just turned around and dumped it on the market.
Right.
Yeah. No, I am glad that we didn't go that route and got to mitigate against that. And by the way, every single one of those people who made those promises didn't deliver on them. So yeah, luckily for the most part, we didn't go along with them. And the ones that we did all burned us. So it's like the amount for everyone we went along with, there were 20 or 30 that we didn't. And for everyone that we did, I would say 9 out of 10 of them just, weren't able to deliver. Doesn't mean they were bad people. It just means they just weren't able to execute on their strategy, or did that deal with, dozens of other people, or were bad people. Yeah.
There's a lot of bad people in crypto, and I'm increasingly of the opinion that a lot of the tokens that went nowhere had the best of intentions, but the really bad people were the ones who came along and said, "Hey, I'll make your token go to the moon,
Right.
and just give me 20% or whatever percent that they ask for." And they make it go up a little bit just so that they can dump it.
Yeah. The interesting thing is that the dynamics of the crypto market, and this is the thing I've always had to square, the dynamic of the crypto market is not dissimilar from the dynamics of the traditional equities market. And the fact that there's market makers, the fact that it's very insider tradey, with regards to how the institutions that back the liquidity for these particular markets function, the marketers that you need to bring forth to, handle all the communications behind your, stock and behind the company itself to stay in communications with your shareholders. And if you look at, and I think this is actually really where I think a lot of people have to give accolades to Elon Musk, because he's done an unbelievable job with, I mean, he's basically a marketer, and he's done an unbelievable job with the way that he's managed the communications around, in particular, Tesla, and now that's transferred over to what he's doing with SpaceX and and even X, and XAI. I mean, he's done all these different things, right? But the Tesla endeavor, right, and the way he was handling the people shorting the shit out of his stock, the fact that he weathered those storms. I mean, obviously he had a lot of cash and influence, but that still doesn't guarantee that you make it through those difficult times. And when you have massive companies, huge hedge funds shorting the shit out of your stock, the other piece of that is that they're going to run negative press against you to try and get people to sell, right? So it's like, not only did they just open a short, but they're also now working against you to bet on your failure so that they can cash their bet, right? And the fact that not only did he make it through that, but built one of the most valuable companies in the world and is now the richest guy in the world through that whole process is nothing short of unbelievable.
Yeah, I just really read that his net worth is Mark
Bezos
plus
Zuckerberg
combined. It's like,
yeah.
Kidding. But I actually never really thought about it like that, where the people that are opening the shorts are also opening the marketing campaign to shit on your company. And when you think about like Bitcoin, for instance, the banks, shitting on Bitcoin and just opening up all this, marketing around how it's using all the power in the world and it's gonna, all the green energy stuff and how criminals and rapists and murderers and terrorists are using it, and like all that press around it to just push Bitcoin down so it doesn't infringe on the bank. But also when you think about these companies that get all this negative press, you're just like, who's out just like tormenting these companies? And dude, I bet you it's these short.
100%. There's some really famous trades. I forget which. There was one that was like a Herbalife trade. I forget who was he was like a very savvy. There's like these certain traders that do these particular types of trades that are like inverse trades, where they're all about, harming the company and opening a short, and they'll run campaigns to try and, attack the founders or frame it up as a Ponzi scheme, or, talk about how the tech or the patents or the, product are, BS. And then if you can cash that in, you win. Same thing happened with that whole period of time around GameStop. And if you remember the Citadel and GameStop, thing where they were like, oh, there's nothing there, nobody's going and renting video games anymore because everything went digital, and the whole point of that was to, where these guys have these huge open shorts on AMC and all these like dino stocks that were from the yester era of the markets, and frankly, from the 80s and 90s, so they were kind of antiquated from a technology or from a consumer behavior standpoint, and just hoping that they go to zero and they cash the ticket, right? And also they'll run negative press. So you hire a PR campaign to write, negative press and get people to unload their stock and cash in on those trades. And if it goes the other way, you're cooked. And we saw this happen. We saw it happen with Bitcoin. Saw it happen with Ethereum. Saw it happen with GameStop. We've seen it. We saw it happen with Tesla.
Yeah.
Like I remember there were some famous shorters that had to exit their trade on shorting Tesla. For years they left them open.
Right.
And they were underwater by just, I can't give you the exact number, but catastrophic amounts of money. And when you close that short, you're just cementing your losses and just saying, hey, that was a bad bet. Elon got me.
In the past, short sellers have had this kind of, I'm not sure if it's a bad reputation, but it's kind of a weird reputation, a little bit like gold bugs. Gold bugs are the original short sellers. They're shorting the dollar. Dollar is going to zero. You better buy gold. But it's a weird reputation they have because they do go and either dig up real dirt, which makes them investigative journalists, or they invent the dirt, and that makes them just smear artists.
Yeah, for sure. I think, and we were saying this a few years ago, that I think that the narrative around Bitcoin using, all the energy of the world at some point, like mining the last coin of Bitcoin is going to use all the energy on the planet, or something, those type of silly narratives, or someone who convinced anybody that running a Bitcoin mine was polluting the planet more than the JP Morgan, office building that has 30,000 employees driving their cars to work every single day or something like that. Those narratives just seem like they were manufactured and were never real, right? But big magazines and editors of newspapers wrote up those stories and perpetuated that as frankly BS, right? Where that was a moment in time that if it went the other way, they were either mining it themselves or buying it cheap. But it's like if they had gone the other way, it was also the moment in time where you wanted to pile in. Like if you could have been, if the narrative could be going the other way, where it's like, this is the perfect moment in time, you should be mining Bitcoin. And it was a positive narrative. Like imagine what could have happened with the price going way back. But a lot of those narratives, whether it be censorship from China, whether it be polluting and, energy inefficiency, or, just, now the fear is, quantum hacks. I mean, there's just constant FUD, going towards Bitcoin. And, I think with the amount of people that now have it on their balance sheet, I think it would be difficult to see it really capitulate substantially.
If you don't have haters, you're not going big enough. So I was always somewhat pleased to know that we had some haters, because it meant we were doing something significant.
Yeah, getting a lot.
Also, if the mainstream, so because news is for sale to basically the highest bidder.
Sure.
If the mainstream is telling you that something is bad, it probably means that it's good, and vice versa. And I'm not even like trying to analyze that like as a conspiracy theorist. I'm just saying from the broad perspective, because it costs money to convince people of something. If somebody's trying to convince you of something, it means that probably benefits them.
Mhm.
And that means it, let's not say probably, but maybe is to your detriment. So I think that if you read a piece of some information in the mainstream that's trying to convince you of something, you probably have a better chance betting against it than betting for it. Certainly with Bitcoin, that was the case. All the mainstream wanted you to believe it was terrible and going to zero, and that was all lies. They were lying. They were trying to take care of themselves, and not believing them turned out to be the most effective thing.
Yeah.
And so I think you can kind of potentially find some good, I don't want to say trades, but some good strategies just by opening your newspaper, reading what is it that people want me to think, and then just thinking the opposite.
Yeah, it's a not a bad way of looking at it for sure.
We just found Caleb's investment strategy.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. Here I'll bring up the chart today. We'll do a little. This is a very freaky looking chart right here.
It's like everything is Jim Cramer.
Yeah, for sure. All right, here. Let's see here. We'll share. Let's share this biddy. So here's biddy. Here's the chart for the day. Let's clean this up a little bit right here. Back to almost.
Oh, you're on the 15-minute. You gotta use the day chart.
Yeah, no. I'm going to the day chart. But look at this little scam wick right here.
Yeah.
Little liquidation wick that they just little fake
Yeah.
out right here.
Yeah. I mean, that's just because somebody, and it's not necessarily the exchange themselves. It's somebody knows that you have X amount of people who are shorting, and so you need to go wipe out all those shorts, and you're gonna make some money off of that.
Yeah. I keep a lot of I got some interesting little lines on this particular chart. This chart, I've had this chart forever right here. I use this chart and has a lot of different levels that I've been tracking for years and years and years. But one of the easiest signals right here was losing this level, this line right here. I'll make this line. That was we knew that was this red line right here. We knew that we were riding this line, since October 2023, support resistance, and the second that it went off a cliff right here, what day was that? That was the October 10th. That, like I said, that was your signal. That was your top 125. But right when it lost this level, it was like, and if you could have gotten out anywhere in this range above, like you said, above 100, we got that huge wick down to 100. Like, you had basically about a month that you could have sold above 100 grand with ease.
Yep.
Before the bottom fell out,
Yeah, I mean, one of the smartest pieces of advice that I've ever heard for trading is, like, just don't try to be smart. No two trades in the same day. Don't watch the minute chart or the 15-minute chart. Just, put it in log scale. Are you in log scale?
No, I don't think I leave it in log now.
I mean, if you want to look at multi-year charts, you should put it in log, because then you're just going to get a line. And just relax and let time be your friend.
Well, look, if you're looking at this chart right here, right? So what does the time be your friend levels tell you here? And I think it's very clear what we're seeing here, which is that this blue line, I mean, it's probably a little, this blue line is your target, like if you
I wouldn't try to catch it.
You're not going to, but if you set an order anywhere in this mid 7, that's what I'm saying. Like, can you catch the blue line? No, probably not. It will probably be a quick wick, and it might not even make it to 68. But that's what I'm saying. Like, really anywhere in this, let's see.
If I had a pile of cash, I would just accumulate now, every day.
Yeah.
Do buy. Just because, it might go in the 70s, but it also might not. And the same thing on the upside. It was 110. And I remember I said on this call that I thought it was going to 150.
Yeah.
That was when it was before it went over 100, and it didn't. So I was wrong. Yeah. But it's also, you can be wrong and you can still be right. But being right is just, you kind of you take the opportunity to do like if it gets near your target, you move a little bit, and if it gets closer, you move more and more. Just be kind of, I don't know, lazy and dumb.
Yeah, just set
Low.
your targets and accumulate. I mean, accumulating is always a good strategy. You know, I always tell newbies coming into the market, you know, just set a buy every single Tuesday or every single Friday or whatever for a little bit of, you know, coin, and just keep accumulating. And that way you can dollar cost average into your position over a period, you know, over a long period. And some of my friends who've been doing that for years now are really happy with that strategy because they've gotten some, you know,
there's a website, I don't remember what it was, and it might not exist anymore. It's, you know, things come and go, but it was one of the Bitcoin maxis that created a service where you could once a week take a percentage of your paycheck into Bitcoin. And that's just such a good strategy because, yeah, you're going to make some dumb buys, but you're also going to make some really smart buys. And if you go into history and just plot that strategy back, you'll see that you make a ton of money. You know, you make some dumb buys, but you know, it's all averaged out.
Yeah, this little green box. Like, this is what I would say is right now, if you're looking at where you're entering, it's right here. I mean, we're at 85 right now as we speak, you know? So like, this is the buy zone right here, in my opinion, for Biddy. Now, is there a world where you could get some lows where you could, you know, where we could pop back up into the 90s for sure, you know? But this is just where the next level of accumulation is going to be. And look, I mean, is there a world in which you could be buying in this, you know, 70 to 85,000 range, and all of a sudden we're down in the 50s? I mean, sure, it could happen. I mean, there's nothing saying that wouldn't happen. But if you look at the levels, I think it would be extremely difficult to see anything go below the 52, this 52 level right here. I just think I think that's really not.
What's this top right here? The second top?
The one on the left? One right here?
The one below it on the left.
This one?
Yeah.
This one was, this is the April 2021. This was the 65,000. So this top, this was after the ETF announcement, I believe. And this is where, because this is April 2021. So this is, you know, it went from that bottom of that trade. This is basically, and then this is when everything ripped back up to the upsides, you know? Yeah. I mean, it's just so crazy to look at these levels down here. That was the previous high.
Yeah, I remember when this guy, I was looking on Twitter, back when it was called Twitter, and this guy tweeted, I just refinanced my house at $19,000. And this was when it was just like absolutely free falling. And he refinanced his house and put it all in Bitcoin at 19,000. He's like, do I sell? You know, and he'd be obviously taking a loss at 19,000. When it was down at like 16, it like was free falling. And I was actually buying at 16. That's why I saw it.
Yeah.
And
that's this level.
He just didn't do anything. He looked like the fucking smartest guy in the room. Holding that from 16,000 up to 120,000.
Yeah,
a fucking genius in that trade. But
if you can hold it,
probably sold at a loss and fucking is living on the street right now. But if you got some diamond hands,
do anything. That's all it takes, you know.
This is a very interesting little thing, though, right here. You know, is what was happening right here. Look at the volume at the bottom, right? So it's really interesting to see that when Bitcoin bottomed out in this kind of like mid 2022 to early 2023, look at the buying volume that was happening right here. This is the most dramatic volume in the history of the trade. And it really defined the bottom right here. And ever since, I mean, there's obviously been volume spikes, but nothing of this magnitude right here. Like, this was really,
it shows the selling pressure, because you know that everyone's like, oh, this is the bottom, I'm going to buy. And that amount of liquidity also shows the amount of people just selling.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. There were a lot of people this would have included a lot of sellers that were just basically exiting and just going, this is going to fucking zero, you know, and just selling the bottom here. This was the craziest little moment. I actually tracked this. I left this line on here and I'm pretty proud of this line. But I had drawn this line. This is mid July or mid 2023, and where I identified like if we break this line, that's going to be the beginning. And I remember exactly where I was when this broke. And this was one of the craziest money making opportunities right here between this October through the early part of 2024. This is just one of the craziest little runs right here where we everything ripped. I believe this was the beginning of this the ETF trade when everything just kind of went Richter scales right here.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was just, and then we've been on a bull run. I mean, this is where a lot of people identify that the bull run started, was breaking this line in October 23. And for the last 2 years, shit's been ripping. I mean, let's look at this trade right here, right? So if you got in, oops, that's not the number we wanted to do. If you got in right here on this 26th and got to the top, you're talking about a 375% trade, over, basically 2 years. And yeah, and we're finally, broke the line, and now we're on a reset. And what happens with these resets? It's pretty much the same thing every single time. It always comes back down to the previous range high. And we saw this here in this area where, this whole, if you look at this construction and what happened, once it broke down, we came back down to, this level, which was, right here. And that was where the construction came back to. And so that's why I'm thinking that if we're looking at what's happening today, where everything's broken back down, then where's it going to come back down to? It's going to come back to this construction. So that's where I think this is our previous high in this 70,000 range. And to Caleb's point, this is where you start buying the dip,
If I had a pile of money right now, I would be buying it today.
Yeah.
Because for me, 86 is close enough to, again, I never care about trying to catch the tops or the bottoms because it kind of drives you nuts.
Yeah.
And the worst thing you can do is start watching the chart over the course of the day and then start trying to grab little micro tops and bottoms, because that's when you're going to get ripped off by basically bots. They're going to paint a chart that they're just sitting there watching the trades, the bots, and it's mostly bots, sitting there trading. And so when you're trading against bots or a bot, and that bot is going to make a chart that makes you, goes up, 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 and then you buy, and then it goes down, 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 and then it wants you to panic, and then you panic and you sell, and then it goes up, 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 and then tries to get you to buy again. And that's just a bot, just playing with the price in that little range. And if you start going into the minute chart or the 15-minute chart, that's where you're really going to get ripped off by those things.
Yeah.
But if you're doing stuff on a like a month scale or even a year scale, that's where it becomes really hard to screw up. And that's what's nice.
Yeah. Well, here, if you look at the weekly scale, and this is really interesting, also notable rate here, this level, let's see here. This level right here was Liberation Day in April, which plummeted the price of Bitcoin. I think, where did this thing get to? It was the low was 74.5. That was our low. That was the low. And a lot of people, this was a capitulation event, right? So everyone's like, oh my God, we're going to zero, this and that, sell. Huge amounts of volume come in. And then what happened? We went all the way back up to the all-time high. and I should say went all the way back and set a new all-time high. We broke the all-time high that was previously at 109 and went all the way up to 125. So now we're coming back down to this level. The question, and this is a really important question, and it's yet to be seen, but the question is whether we, well, it looks like we already kind of broke it. But I was going to say, you kind of had this channel right here. So now we broke down out of this channel. And, the question is, I guess you could maybe run it like this. Yeah, no, it's the whole construction's pretty fucking broken at this point. Like, just looking for some shapes and where the level, what kind of confluence do you have as far as levels and bottoms, and where is this price coming to? I really think I feel strongly that we will see the 68 number. The interesting thing is that if right now we have a higher low in terms of rate where we are right now. So this was this low, and this is a higher low. The question is, if we break below this 77, or let's even say the 75 number, it's real bad for resetting and heading back up towards higher ground. So, this little moment in time right here, is incredibly critical. Just to see if we're going to go below this low in that 75 level, or whether we, kind of make a stop here, which is a higher low, which is actually a nice signal that if we make a higher low and then it kind of finds a bottom here, and then, it allows you to kind of head back up imminently. So, but yeah, this is a watch and see, and certainly this is a place where you would want to deploy some capital, because it could go either way. And if it goes lower, you keep buying, and if it goes higher, you cut the bottom. So good for you.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's certainly a world where it passes that low, and then the next place is the 50-60 range.
Yeah.
That's kind of the next step down on the stairs.
Yeah.
But again, they say stack sats, stay humble, and keep a low time preference. That's it.
Yeah. The easiest way to look at it for people who are not like technical analysis people is that you go look at what I always say. I say, go look at the previous range high, right? So it's this level, right? Where we had all these tops that occurred. And then that becomes the new bottom, because that's where all the support is. Where all the, the support is. So like the price coming down into this buy zone right here, this is just optimal, buy zone. Now, to your point, Caleb, like, can you get those buy zones? Those buy zones, previous range highs, usually there's a lot of orders that are set in this area. So the price will usually wick down there. But you may not get your order filled. And if you're trying to be, too sharp and setting, hey, I'm going to put it right at the previous range high number, like, you might not get filled depending on how much money you're trying to clear, but and depending on the order book and the exchange you're trading on. But that's why, you can't be scientific necessarily, especially if you're trying to trade volume, but about hitting these exact numbers on the button, which is why, stack stats strategy and just accumulating over a period of time, getting, a range of entry points and dollar cost averaging into your position is always going to be the best strategy for sure.
It's the easiest good strategy.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people try to be real smart, and then when they get smart, they zoom in, and when they zoom in, that's really dumb, and they get wiped out, and they lose money. Even how it works. People can it's easy to even lose money in a bull market. I'm sure people who have this has happened, like the market just ripping, and somehow they manage to zoom in close enough, and they buy and sell, and they day trade all their money away.
When you're looking at the news, you're like, oh shit, this is gonna happen. I'm gonna fucking step out of my trade to go get it when it hits rock bottom, and then it just rips the upside. And you're just like,
and then you enter, and then it goes back, and then you sell, and then
I missed it. You got to jump back in, and then it's like, rip. You're like, buy buy high, sell low. Just
yeah, it's a great strategy. But if you're looking for an entry point, we are now 30+% down. And that's always a good signal. Like the biggest drops in Bitcoin's history are roughly 30% and at a time. And so this is just a great, we're down heavy, down big, grandma who unloaded
again. Like how far are we down below 100 right now?
31%.
No, below 100,000. You're probably you're talking
below 100. I was going about below the all-time high, but yeah, going below 100, 15-ish%.
Yeah. So it's going above 100. Everyone knows that. It's going above 200 eventually. It's going above 500 eventually. So if you look at your time frame, it's just that's where you get to make decisions.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah. So just understanding and I think that's another really important thing that most traders don't do is they look for an entry point, but they haven't set an exit point where they go, hey, this is what my trade is. I'm going in with this mindset, and this is what I'm focused on as my exit. And they set up the trade, and then they change their mind. And by doing so, you've invalidated all the theory that went in, to entering. So a good example of that is let's say you buy, and this is an interesting trade that I've done in the past. So let's say you buy AVAX Avalanche, and you bought it, and you see it available at $20, and you go, oh wow, I really think AVAX is going back up to $40, so I'm going to buy it at 20. And then AVAX goes to 15, drops. And then you go, oh my God, I need to sell because it's not going up. No, you were interested in AVAX at $20. So obviously you should be more interested in AVAX at 15. Oh, now it went down to 12. Well, you should be even more interested at 12 because you set an exit point at 40. You're believing that it's going back out at 40. And so what happens is people go the other way and they invalidate their trade and their time horizon and their exit point. And then that's how you end up losing money, because you get emotional about the fact that your $20 investment is now worth 15. And then you convince yourself that you made a bad decision. All the people who did this around Bitcoin and even altcoins, I mean, obviously you could feel a lot more pain with altcoins. You have to hold them for longer to see those highs. But if you had set those numbers, then when it does get up to 40, this is where the trick is. When AVAX does get to 40, you have to be willing to start unloading your position, because what happens is you get to 40, you see you doubled your money, and you go, oh my God, what if it goes to 50? And you hold it. Yeah, or it goes up higher, and then you don't end up selling. And so that's where I think a lot of the issues arise. And we saw a lot of this happen with Packet, right? Where people got in at Packet at 10th of a penny, and all of a sudden it's trading at 2, 3, 4, 5 pennies, and people didn't sell it. And now it's all the way back down at hundreds of a penny, and people are like, oh yeah, it was a bad investment. It's like, no, you just forgot to sell. You didn't set an exit point. You didn't take liquidity, and as a result, you invalidated your trade. Now you rode it all the way back to the bottom. And round tripping, is just as bad as selling at a loss. It's just maybe even worse. So,
well, I mean, then the question is the goal to have dollars, or is because
well, it has to be. It has to be.
You may be somebody that wants to have dollars, or you may be somebody that wants to have Bitcoin, so you're selling dollars.
But it goes the other way too, because as you get in and out of the trade, you can accumulate both. And I think that's also, if it takes a little bit more of a savvy trader, mentality. But if you can buy low, sell high, buy again low, and understand that the market is cyclical in that regard, you can also get dollars out and still have your treasury position. So I think that's, it's hard to do, and it takes a certain kind of mentality where you have to be on it to accomplish that goal. It's easier said than done for sure, but if you can do it, good on you.
your goal is to collect sats, then you trade a slightly different
That's true.
method than if your goal is to collect dollars.
That is true. That is true. And I have a couple friends that have done options trading and taken all of their profits in Bitcoin, and just it's like whatever the yield is, and then you take it in Bitcoin and you just keep accumulating, and you don't really care about the levels. Even if, let's say, you exit a trade on Bitcoin and it's $100,000 price point, and you take your profits in sats, and now Bitcoin's trading at 85,000, and those sats are now down 15%. But you still took your profits in sats, and when it's up at 120, you're going to look good. And it's just accumulating satoshis over time. And at one point, even though you got some at 100, then it went down to 85. One point it's at 500, and you look like a freaking genius for taking profits in satoshis at 110. So it is also around time horizon, and the fact that these moments where the market is down, even if that's 1 to 2 years, which is like, for example, in the case of Packet, it's been a year now of, year and a half where the market's been shitty for us. And but assuming everything goes back to these higher levels, you just weathered the storm, and just understood that you were, just holding during that period. And people did that with Bitcoin. There was a huge periods of Bitcoin where the market was just in the absolute shitter, and you had to feel horrible. I mean, I think about the people that bought Bitcoin at 19,000 and went all the way down to 3, for years. Tough.
Well, on that note, let's leave it there.
Yeah, I'll give a quick little update because we are getting close to the end of the year, and just a little couple minutes for the folks that hung with us and joined our TA conversation today. So a little bit of update on this transaction. So, we've talked a little bit about it in the past, about the due diligence process and what's happened here. And had no belief that there was any way this would extend past this year, but it looks like it will now. What happened is that we needed to take custody of the Amazon servers that are associated with this service, and those servers are held, and there was a huge bill associated with them. And so the seller had to resolve that in advance of us taking custody, and that's taken them a really long time to resolve that with Amazon. And so as a result, they changed the extension agreements. We've been getting extensions from them every single week, and just said, hey, the due diligence process will be will conclude 5 business days after we give you access to Amazon. So now we're just on hold waiting to get access to Amazon. Everything else is ready to go. So we're like frothing to pull the trigger and complete. And we've just been at the mercy of, obviously we don't want to buy something until we have custody of all of its assets. And so that's kind of what's delayed us, since now October, all the way through the holidays. But I think we'll hit the ground running in the beginning of the year. And man, we can't wait to get shot out of a cannon with this, because and we said this many times in the past, but this will be a high profile acquisition. This transaction is going to definitely get a lot of just press naturally, and then it will also be it will also coincide with our strategies on the crypto side. And in particular, there's a lot of ideas and niche markets that we want to target with our communication strategy, which hopefully can have a positive influence on people wanting to get involved with this project with us, and also with community building that could lend itself to price growth. So those are all the the mandates on our end, and we're still super excited to keep hammering it. But man, it just reminds us of so many different instances in our careers where we've had a target date and had that date just be a moving goalpost. So once again, just kind of the way things way things shake out sometimes. And, you know, we've had to kind of just keep our head down and keep grinding to get it over the finish line. But man, it is teed up. It's exciting. It's huge. It's notable, and it looks like it's going to close. You know,
these big deals always take longer than you can imagine. And when you start out, you know it's going to take longer than you can imagine. And so you imagine longer, and then it still takes longer than you can imagine.
And the weird thing about this, and the reason we were so confident on the date, is because the seller was so aggressive with the dates. And we were the ones saying, hey, why don't we take 2-3 months to do due diligence? They were just like, no, 2 weeks. And once the due diligence is done, you have to pay 2 weeks later. And we're just moving quick. And then they hit a snafu, and all of a sudden they're like, all right, man, we had to give you guys another couple months. I was like, well, we should have just done a couple months from the beginning. I wanted it to be a couple months due diligence process, but they insisted not, which is why we felt comfortable telling everyone that the holdup would never be on our side, and it turned out to be on theirs. And I didn't think it would ever be on theirs either, because they so aggressively wanted to abbreviate the transaction duration. So, but anyways, that's just the way it shook out. And it'll be a very cool, notable thing. I think, you know, our community is going to be excited because of the profile of it. And also because we've talked about this for years, but, you know, having Packet not just live solely within the crypto community, like how do we branch out and bring people in that are not just crypto degens or maxis or, you know, savvy technology folks? Like, how do we bring in kind of the more normie community and people who could just be using this technology, but not really care about the coin or not really care about crypto? And how can we market to a broader audience than just the crypto community, right? So these are the reasons why we felt really excited to go down this path. And we think it will have be a positive catalyst for the project as we complete.
Yep. All right, cool. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Be back same time, same place next. Wait, are we? Is it?
Is next week? No, that's Well,
it's
a weird run. We'll let everyone know what we're gonna do, because next week is Christmas Eve, and then the week after is New Year's.
So this might actually be. I mean, this might be the last one before the New Year.
We'll see. We might do one next week. We might be able to do a short one next week. We'll keep you posted. If we have some good news to update, we'll pop on. So yeah, stay tuned, y'all. Thanks for joining.
In the chat.
On the next. Peace.